Hi, I'm Steve Stearns from Outside Health and Fitness, and welcome to episode number 5 of the Best Life Show. We are really excited about our show today. We are thrilled to have an expert clinical hypnotherapist with us to help us understand how we can find success in reaching weight loss goals. So on today's show, you're going to discover how to stop emotional eating, how to shut off hunger cravings, and how to get off the diet roller coaster once and for all. But before we get into that, let's talk with my co-host, Jessica Bailey from Sassy Girl Fitness. Hey, Jessica, how's it going?
Hi, Steve. I'm very excited that we're here tonight, finally getting a chance to, talk and not be in the snow.
Oh, well, I was going to say, it looks like you're standing right in front of a snowbanking there.
And it's just my white background.
That's just your white background.
It's just my white background. It's not because I'm in a snowbank.
I see.
I could never do a show from a snowbank.
That would be terrible.
That would be
Absolutely.
awful.
Hey, can you tell our listeners how they can interact with us tonight? Because we kind of talked about that a little bit beforehand.
So we have 2 ways that you can interact with us. So if you have questions, you can interact via Twitter with the hashtag BLSLive, and we will see the questions and then ask our expert. Or you can, if you're on Google Hangouts with us, you can ask us via instant messenger, and we will answer your questions.
That's right. Just that little Q&A thing there, right?
Yeah, it's on. If you're on the Hangout, you go to your left-hand side and it says Q&A, and you can just hit that and ask a question, and we will answer it for you.
That's awesome.
We will ask our expert to answer the question.
Yeah, we won't do it.
Yeah.
That's crazy. All right, well, that's great. Let's get right into the show. I want to introduce our guest today. We're honored to have Kevin Smullin with us on the show. And like I said earlier, Kevin is a certified clinical hypnotherapist, a coach, and author of the book, Winning the Battle Within Yourself. He helps frustrated people who want to make a change in their life but don't really know how to do that. He helps them break through their personal barriers so that they feel empowered to be in control of their own life. Welcome to the Best Life Show, Kevin.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
Great. Can you help somebody that's tongue-tied like that?
You know, it's just a little mental problem. We'll get you past that.
Thank goodness. We don't have a lot of time, you know. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about was we talked there at the beginning. We're going to talk about emotional eating, and I know that that's a struggle for a lot of people. How exactly do you stop emotional eating? How do you help people with that?
Okay, great question. So, you know, emotional eating is really just a trigger because we have these unresolved emotions that are going on within us. And those emotions are different for everybody, but it's part of the basic addiction pattern. And I know people don't like to hear that, but the addiction pattern goes like this. There's something that's going on internally that we don't know how to resolve. And so because we don't know how to fix it internally, we start looking for something externally to fix it. And so for some people that becomes food. For other people it becomes alcohol or drugs or. There's tons of them, right? Mm-hmm. But all it is just it's an attempt to fix what they have going on internally. And so the way that we end up fixing that is it really just comes down to changing how we think and how we feel, because as we change internally how we feel, that need to satisfy how we feel is completely gone. So, like as a quick example, there was one client I was working with. She was just eating emotionally uncontrollably, and as I was working with her, she went back to this memory where she was going to daycare because her parents, they had to both work and she had to go to daycare. Well, she was crying, didn't want to go. They pull up at daycare, and the daycare provider sees that she's crying, wants to calm her down, and says, "Hey, why don't you come in? We'll grab a snack and help you feel better," right? Well, the snack at that time was Oreos and milk. That was the treat of the time. Helped her feel better. Well, the next day, same thing happened. Brought her in. She was crying, didn't want to go. Gave her Oreos and milk. Well, what she didn't realize is now, as an adult, she's fighting with her husband. She's got similar, turmoil going on inside, and guess what her go-to food is?
Right.
Oreos and milk.
So a lot of these things, I mean, they go way back.
Oh, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah, and if you think about it, food is one of those things where we were so negatively conditioned from birth. So I'll give you an example of something my parents told me, and you'll probably laugh at this because your parents probably told you the same thing. But my parents always told me if I wanted to have dessert, I had to
eat everything. Eat all.
Yeah, finish your plate.
Oh, your parents told you the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, have you ever thought about that for a second? The reward for eating more is to eat more.
Crazy.
Right? I mean, it's just one of those things where food, we're so negatively programmed from birth, and so we have all these patterns where we just eat and we don't know why, and we have all these emotions going on, and we're trying to fix them, and we don't know how to fix them. And so that's really where I help clients the most, is being able to go in, shut those emotions off, because once the emotions are gone, there's not that trigger of having to eat emotionally anymore.
So let me ask you this. How can you instantly gain control of a craving?
Okay, great question. So the best way to do it, Jessica, is actually just to do an example. Is that okay if we just do a live example with you?
Yeah.
Perfect. So what is your craving of choice?
Candy. I would say
Candy.
like gummy worms, gummy bears, that kind of stuff.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to use that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to just imagine you've got those gummy bears right there in front of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the colors, they're just a little bit sticky and gooey, everything that you absolutely love. And the more I'm talking about the details of how they look and how they taste and everything about them, what starts happening to that craving that you have?
I want it. It's
Okay,
intense.
good. Okay, good. And so that's what we would call association. You're associating with it because it's almost like you're reliving that experience live right now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's exactly what you're seeing and what you're thinking and what you're feeling, right? Well, if we can associate with something and intensify that feeling, doesn't it make sense that we can just do the opposite and shut it down?
Right.
So this time, what I want you to do is I want you to actually think, just imagine that same instance, but instead of reliving it first person, look at it from a third person point of view. In other words, it's almost like you're watching a movie, but it's someone who looks like you but isn't really you. And you see them having this craving for gummy bears. And as you watch that movie, what happens to that feeling?
It makes me sad.
Why does it make you sad?
It makes me sad because I want to tell her like how bad it is for her body and what she's gonna do to herself by putting this in there. Yeah.
Great. And what happens to the craving, that intensity that you had before within you?
Oh, it's not as intense. Definitely.
Exactly. That's the point. So what ends up happening is as we've got a craving or something that we're struggling with, it's because we're reliving it from that first person point of view. We're thinking about how it looks and how it feels and how it sounds. And if we step back and look like it's a movie instead of third person point of view, it takes all the intensity out of it, and we get to view it from a very a very adult standpoint, so to speak, that we view it critically for what it really is. Just like you said, well, I kind of feel bad for her because she doesn't realize how bad that is. That's one way that we can just rapidly, in the moment, shut down those cravings.
Wow, that's great. I've never even thought about putting a negative thought on it. That's great. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. That kind of leads me into this next area, and maybe you kind of just demonstrated some of that. But how does hypnotherapy help somebody overcome those obstacles that keep them from losing the weight and being, confident in their ability?
Okay, great question. And so, what you saw is really just something that people can do in the moment. A lot of the work that I do with one-on-one clients, and this is really what the book was about, is about how to resolve those things internally so that people can achieve the success that they want. So as we talk specifically about losing weight, there's this principle that we call the mind-body connection. So it's this principle where the mind is always in connection with the body, and they're always communicating back and forth, and that's why we feel hunger and we feel thirst and we feel pain, and there's always this messaging going on back and forth, right? Well, the point is that oftentimes as people gain emotional weight, they've taken on all this baggage of I'm not good enough, and I'm not smart enough, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not whatever enough. All that emotional weight, because the mind and body are so directly connected, as people gain emotional weight, the physical weight tends to respond as well. And so the reverse of that is also true. I help people completely get rid of the emotional weight, and what ends up happening is as those behaviors change and as the emotional weight comes off, the physical world just tends to respond.
So is that a lot of that connection between the physiological connection between stress and what goes on inside your body?
Yeah, very much so. And in fact, I've often found with most people, and again, everybody's different, right? So I'm talking in general terms and just realizing that there are differences from one person to the next. But I found in about 60 to 70% of the cases that I'm working with people on weight loss, that often the weight is actually a defense mechanism for them. So it's based on some kind of past trauma. Sometimes it's some kind of an abuse, or sometimes it's a difficult situation like their parents got divorced at a very early age, or there was some kind of traumatic experience that they went through, where for them the weight is actually a defense. And so one of the reasons why a lot of people struggle to get off that roller coaster is because for them, the weight is a defense mechanism. So even if they do the right things of eating correctly and exercising, and as they start getting some weight coming off, subconsciously they feel that they're becoming vulnerable because that hasn't been dealt with yet. And so the defense mechanism just takes over and the weight comes back on. So that's one of the key ways that people can just get off that roller coaster, is by getting rid of that defense mechanism.
Wow, it makes so much sense. So is it possible to think yourself thin?
Most people love this one, but there was a study that was done a long time ago by a physiologist. I can't remember his name, but he was actually studying the power of the mind and what visualization can do. So like most research studies, there's 3 different groups, right? You've got your control group and then the 2 groups that you're kind of testing. So group 1, and what he was measuring was finger strength. Group 1 was people who actually did the finger strength exercises, right? Group 2 was people who did 0 exercises. They simply just visualized it and thought about it. And then the 3rd group, the control group, is the group that did nothing. So the results of the study were that, obviously not surprised, the control group who did nothing, they experienced 0% improvement. Okay. Also not a surprise, the group who did the exercises, they had the largest percentage increase, and I think it was like 52%. But the surprising part is the group in the middle who only visualized it. They literally did nothing. It was all just in their mind. Their finger strength increased 36% just by thinking about it.
Wow.
Right? But taking that idea and talking about the mindset that people have, do you know those people who are skinny and they just eat everything that they want and it doesn't matter, and you're just like, wow, they must have an awesome metabolism, right?
Yeah, but sometimes I hate them too.
Yeah, of course you do. But that's the justification, is they must have an awesome metabolism, right?
Right.
Well, think about it this way. Our subconscious mind, which is what I specialize in, our subconscious handles all of our automatic body functions, the things that don't require conscious thought. That would include metabolizing food, because I don't have to think about that. It just does it. We say automatically, but it's just a different part of my mind doing that. Well, if you get into the mindset of that person who's skinny, the thought that they have about food is literally that. I can eat whatever I want, and it doesn't matter. So when they have that thought, the subconscious literally takes that thought and says, well, the only way I can make that a reality is to fire up the metabolism. Because the subconscious, its job is to simply do what it's told, right? It's like the genie in the bottle, has all the power in the world. It'll do whatever you want it to, but it just needs to be told. So it compensates, burns the metabolism, and so they can eat whatever they want, and it literally doesn't matter because that's what they've directed their subconscious to do. Whereas if you compare that with people who struggle with weight, I'll use my mom as an example. All growing up, my mother struggled with her weight for most of her life, and every holiday season, her dominant thought was, I'm going to gain 10 pounds just by looking at the food, right? And at the end of every holiday season, sure enough, she had gained 10 pounds because her dominant thought was, I'm going to gain weight. What she had directed her subconscious to do was gain weight. So the way that it responded was it slows down the metabolism because the subconscious regulates all those things, right? So what ends up happening is, can we literally think ourselves thin? Yes, a lot of it is really just the directives and the messaging that we're giving to the subconscious, because it will compensate for that.
So you've talked about, this is fascinating stuff. You've talked about how sometimes for people the weight is like a defense mechanism, and then in other instances, it's really kind of that self-talk or the subconscious that's kind of getting in the way. Are there other factors that cause some of us to really struggle, even though we're eating healthy, we're exercising, we're doing all the right stuff, but we still are failing to see the success we're looking for?
Absolutely. So I guess the easiest way of telling this one is really just to use a real life story of a client that I was working with. So a client came to me, similar thing. He was doing all the right things, was eating correctly, exercising regularly, and he started losing weight, but he got to a point where it just wasn't moving forward anymore, and he didn't know what was wrong. So just out of desperation, he came. We started working together, and in one of our sessions, the memory that he went back to was this memory where he was young enough that he had to reach up to grab his father's hand. But he was so in love and so, admired his father that the thought he took on about that experience was, when I grow up, I want to be just like Dad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, here's the problem. Our subconscious tends to take things literally. Right? So at that moment, it was like his subconscious looked up at his dad, took a picture, and said, "That's what you want me to be? Okay, perfect." Well, guess what his dad was struggling with at the time?
Right, his weight, yeah.
His weight, right? And so subconsciously, there's this programming that's running in the background saying, "You want me to be just like that." Now, what would seem like a very healthy, very positive thought, in this case was actually what was holding him back. So in that session, as we're doing the hypnotherapy session, we go in, we challenge and change and correct that thought, and he's dropped 30 pounds without changing another single thing. Again,
Wow.
we've always got this programming that's going on, and oftentimes we're never really aware of what it is that's holding us back. And so, kind of along that line, the two questions that I would, have your listeners ask themselves. The first one is, if they could wave a magic wand and change anything in their life, what would it be? And usually they've got a long list of things. I want to be healthier, I want to lose weight, I want to feel more confident, and on and on and on, right? And then the second question becomes, if those are the things that you want to do, why haven't you done it yet?
Mm-hmm.
And often the answer I get is, I don't know. And actually, as weird as it sounds, that's the answer I personally love to hear. Because I always joke with people, if you just consciously knew what your problem was, wouldn't you fix it?
Right.
And so it's really just a sign to show people that there's something going on deeper at that subconscious level that's keeping them from making those changes that they want to make.
That's amazing stuff.
I am so glad we are talking to you. This is amazing. This is great information.
It is.
Is there more to it than that? Not than that, but is there more to what you're saying?
In what sense?
You had said that we have to think. We have to make positive choices in our thoughts. Is there more? Is there more that we should be doing in everyday life to help us along that, to think ourselves thin?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's another one that will help people just kind of, again, make a very quick shift. So again, just to put this in perspective, our mind really has these two different parts. We have our conscious mind, and that's the part of us where we're analyzing, we're observing, we're watching what's going on and making decisions. On the other side, we have our subconscious, and like we've talked about, it's like that genie in the bottle. Its job is to do what it's told to do. It has no rational ability, no cognitive thought. Its job is just to simply do. But then between the two, we have what's called a critical factor, or a belief system, if you want to call it that. And it's that filter that acts between the conscious and subconscious about what we perceive to be true and correct, right? So with that in mind, pay attention to what's going on in your head as I say this, because hopefully this fits both of you. But Jessica and Steve, I really like those pink shirts you have on tonight. They look really good.
Okay.
Okay, and you're both smiling, so what are you doing with that thought?
Well, I am pretty excited because pink is my favorite color. I'm glad that you like it.
Well, I'm glad, but are you wearing a pink shirt?
No, I'm not wearing a pink shirt.
Okay,
I'm wearing green.
good.
I'm thinking that you somehow, now this is going to be more purple, but I would go with pink. I think it's pretty close.
Okay, good. Excellent. So both of you process that a little bit differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole point, is our perception is what creates our reality. That filter is where we make a decision of, yes, that thought's correct, and we allow it through to the subconscious, or that thought is incorrect, and we simply reject it, and it never gets there to begin with. One of the biggest problems that people have about, as they're going about setting goals and losing weight and all of those things that they want to improve in their life, I'll put it in the context of smoking because this is a very easy example. So a lot of people like to use affirmations as a way of changing things, right? And I love affirmations, but there's also a point where they're not very effective, and this is why. So what ends up happening is the person who wants to quit smoking, they've got this affirmation of, I am a non-smoker, right? Well, here's what happens. That affirmation comes in and it hits that filter where they're going to make a decision whether that's true or not. And what's the decision that they make?
They know it's false.
They know it's false and they reject that thought every single time. So in that case, the affirmation means absolutely nothing, right? So this is what's happening hundreds, if not thousands of times every single day. Every thought that we take on, whether it's somebody that somebody says or we watch, we observe something going on and we make a decision about it, all of those thoughts we're rationally analyzing to see if it's true or not, and if it is, it goes through. The problem that most people have behaviorally is the garbage that they're allowing through that filter is all the negative talk. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I can't do it. I can't lose weight. On and on and on. And because that's what they're allowing through the filter and perceiving as truth, that's what the subconscious goes to work on. So one of the things that everybody can positively benefit from right here and right now is just understanding that relationship and being very careful about what it is that they are allowing through that filter, what they are accepting as true.
Huh.
That's
so
awesome.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah.
So it's one of these things where we almost feel like the negative stuff is the truth, and the positive stuff is not necessarily the truth, which is got to be some deep programming from way back when. I don't know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Right.
I'm feeling like I need to have a talk with my mother.
So Kevin, we like to leave the audience with an actionable item, something that when we sign off tonight, something that somebody could put into practice for themselves to make a change in their life. Is there something that you can share with us like that?
Absolutely, I love it. So here's something that people can do that will just help them help with what we call impulse control, that urge to eat and eat emotionally and cravings and all those things. So like we were talking about earlier, we're so negatively programmed from birth to eat everything. And our parents didn't mean to do that. They just, in fact, in most cases, they're usually just telling us what their parents told them, right?
Right.
But one of the things that we want to do is start undoing that programming, and one of the easiest ways of doing that is, since we're so programmed to eat everything that's on our plate, one thing that I highly recommend that anybody can do right now is anytime they sit down to eat a meal, intentionally leave something on the plate. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a bite or a portion, or it really makes very little difference. But it's that conscious reminder that says, I control food, food doesn't control me. Because as they're consciously making a decision to leave something on the plate, it totally undoes all of that programming that they've had for their whole life. So if I could give anybody a tool to walk away with tonight, it would just be that tool, because every time they do that and they make that conscious decision to leave something there, it reinforces all the programming that food is just fuel for the body and that's all it is. And so once people have gotten the fuel that they need, it doesn't, whether they put it in their mouth or whether they throw it in the garbage, it's waste either way. And it's just that conscious reminder of all that programming.
That's awesome. I'll tell you what, my wife is going to love this because she does that. And my programming has been, since I've known her, is she leaves a bite on her plate, so I finish it. That's awesome advice, though.
Yeah, Kevin, that is, it's really amazing advice. It's so simple, and it seems like I should have been doing this a long time ago. Why haven't I been doing it? So thank you. Thank you for that reminder, and thank you for telling everyone what they should do.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, so today, I'm so excited because I have learned so much, and I hope that you have too. We learned how to stop emotional eating, how to shut off a craving at any time, and how to get off the emotional and weight loss roller coaster. This is very, very exciting. So our next show is February 18th, and it's a Wednesday at 8 p.m. with Bob Choate, and we will be talking to him about mental well-being. This will be interesting. I can't wait. So be sure to follow us on your favorite social media network and never miss a live event or show. Go to bestlifeshow.com/follow and connect with us on Twitter or Instagram, or, sign up for our free newsletter. It's free. It's amazing. It's free. So if you have a chance, feel free to tweet us. We're in touch with Kevin all the time. We will ask him questions, and we will get back to you. And we want to thank you, Kevin, for joining us, and let us know how anyone can get in contact with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. The best way for anybody to get a hold of me is through my website, which is hypnotherapyfreemind.com. And from there, they can connect with me on social media, my podcast, all of that information as well.
That's
Great.
awesome, Kevin. Thanks. And we'll make sure to have the link in the show notes so people can click on it and go right over there and visit you. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I hope to see everyone on February 18th. And thanks for joining me, Steve. This has been fun.
All right. It has been fun. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for living your best life.
Bye-bye.